Hi guys, Dave here. Alright, today's video is going to be a little departure from my normal. Today I'm going to, instead of be talking just about comic book stuff, which I absolutely love and have a bit of a reference point to them, I'm going to be talking about an anime that I've recently started to check out. It deals with none other than Saitama, the One Punch Man. Now, for those of you guys joining me because you're curious to find out more about what Saitama's power might be, welcome. And in case you don't know, I have a bunch of other theory videos about various shows from the DC on CW. I actually have a pretty good track record when it comes to this stuff, thanks to decades of comic book knowledge and learning how to think outside that particular box. I kind of have a rhythm for how this stuff works. For example, in the Supergirl series, I was able to properly guess and explain who I believed Hank Henshaw secretly was, which was later revealed to be true. In the Flash series, I was able to accurately explain how Cisco Ramon ended up gaining the powers to become Vibe in the show. And one of my big ones that I'm rather proud of, I also was able to predict the secret hidden identity of the villain Zoom when he was hiding amongst the hero characters. And I did this months before it was actually revealed. Even though people were ticked off at me and I was a minority voice, I guessed right. So, I try. So, here I'm going to give my thoughts about good old Saitama. People are wondering about how strong is he? What can he do? Well, the thing is, I've saw a lot of things about comics, and yes, he is pretty powerful. I know that he's basically a satire of anime about ridiculously powerful characters. And effectively, I started thinking that he's basically as powerful as he needs to be to deal with his enemies. And that got me thinking about a very key thing that throughout DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and others, there's actually a history of people with one particular type of power that could explain what Saitama can do. Now, yes, he does have, after training hard and training every day, doing 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and running 10 kilometers every day, he has developed greater strength. His hair has fallen out. He has superhuman strength, speed, durability, endurance, and agility. But most notably, he's apparently so strong that all it takes for him to defeat most enemies is one punch. He has varying degrees of strength as well, so he can take out various guys when needed. Well, here's the kicker. Since he appears to be only as strong as he needs to be during those times, otherwise he'd be ripping his clothes every time he stretches or flexes, he'd be destroying doorknobs every time he grabs them, I think what happens is he does have the capability of being powerful, but he isn't always that powerful. As I said, he seems to be as powerful as he needs to be when he needs to be it. So, I believe that these powers are, in core, adaptation. Now, there's some pretty cool adaptations out there. For example, I was taking a look at what exists in nature. Believe it or not, there is a creature called the mantis shrimp. It's, I think its longest is about 1.5 feet long. And these creatures are actually adapted, not only to have some of the greatest vision on Earth, but also they also have this amazing ratcheting, spring-loaded and locking mechanism in their front mandibles. Effectively, they have so much power and torque at them, they lock them into place, ready to be literally organically spring-loaded. When they fight their enemies underwater, or any kind of predators that are stupid enough to come at them, they actually are capable of unleashing a strike that, believe it or not, are capable of being so fast. Some scientists estimated at the speed and impact being 10,000 times the force of gravity. At this speed, at that proportionate size, what happens is it actually creates a low pressure wave from the strike. So not only is it hitting the creature that it's going after, but it creates a low pressure cavitation bubble. It actually forces the water around where it strikes away, and then the water goes rushing back in, creating not just a rush, but an implosion. It generates heat and a burst of light. Let me repeat this. A mantis shrimp punches so hard and so fast, it creates a vacuum which generates an implosion of heat and light. This is naturally possible. And although looking at the possibilities of him becoming, I don't know, essentially the proportionate powers of a mantis shrimp, don't quite think so. However, I have been looking into different stuff. I also actually wrote a book called The Book of Biospiritual Yum Yum Goodness, which deals with my own exploration into something I call it's emotional hypersensitivity, but it's also physical and sensual hypersensitivity. 1 out of 5 people actually have a degree of it where they just pick up external stimuli, it's amplified inside of us, and we read it more. Did you guys know that 93% of all communication that humans do, believe it or not, is nonverbal? Yeah, it's true. Check out the research. So, although we do understand 7% of it, a lot of stuff we do pick up is body language, energy, and stuff like that. And that got me thinking about what Saitama's power might be. So, here's something else I found out that was kind of cool. After I'd written my book, there's something else that's cool that I got to put in my next one when I write one. Believe it or not, scientists have found something called first-order neurons. Effectively, these are the cells in our body that are sensors. But get this. They actually figured out that these are neurons, the same kind of neurons we have in our brains. In fact, what happens is these first-order neurons are all throughout our skin, and when we touch something, it's actually breaking down, doing distance, measurement, pressure. Our skin is doing math and calculating this before it even gets to us. So, showing that our senses are capable of a lot of things. Another thing that people are checking out is now everybody has an innate and to some degree level of the ability to detect magnetic fields. This could be the thing where you pick up energy of certain people, things like that. Well, here's my thought. Now, yes, Saitama is naturally physically stronger, faster, and tougher, but to a base point. Kind of like the Hulk, he's pretty strong, but the big thing about the Hulk is the madder he gets, the stronger he gets. So he has no really upward limit. Well, here's the thing. I think what happens is Saitama has an adaptation power similar to a couple different bad guys. Now, there's something in Marvel and DC that actually covers it. There was a bad guy in Marvel Comics called the Answer. Basically, he was a brainy guy who he worked for the mob. Whenever they got into trouble, he came up with an answer for it. Eventually, he developed the powers that whatever situation he was in, he would develop temporary superpowers for it. He was about to get hit by a car, he developed the power to fly. He got into a gang fight, he became stronger and tougher to take them out. But later, when he tried to fly again, he couldn't do it. He tried to lift up his refrigerator, he couldn't do it. Eventually, he got the hang of his powers and figured out that it's challenge specific. So whatever you put in front of him, he can sense, adapt, and move forward. Darwin, the X-Men, was actually also the same way. He can actually do genetic adaptations to whatever environment he was so he can survive. There was even a character in the Marvel called the Super Adaptoid, he was an android who basically could adapt by copying the physical abilities, skills, and powers of those he encountered. In the Marvel 2099 line, Spider-Man 2099 had a villain kind of like Darwin called Mutagen, who also had developed adaptations for different things, and he was slowly adapting to be able to beat Spidey, so you couldn't use the same move twice on him. Same thing for DC. Super Adaptoid has their own version, Amazo, another android that could absorb and duplicate the powers and weapons and stuff like that. But what really got me thinking about Saitama was a character named Nemesis Kid. This was a Legion of superhero bad guy who imagined somebody that whatever the opponent is in front of him, he could almost instantly adapt to physical levels to take on whatever threat is in front of him. Now, like for dealing with people like Superboy or whatever, that he didn't just generate kryptonite to take out their weaknesses. What he did was he would actually become stronger. There was one comic where he's taking on Superboy, and he actually became twice as strong as him, and he was able to take him out pretty decently. The thing is, his powers only worked on one opponent at a time. You try to team up on him and do more than that, then his powers doesn't work that way. Or eventually, he had a power where just get the heck out of there. There was also a little-known bad guy named the Calculator. They've changed some stuff around on him in the Arrow TV series. I'm not crazy about it. But originally in the comics, the Calculator was not only brilliant, but he had a power that whenever a superhero took him on, he could be defeated, but he would actually adapt to it, so the same superhero couldn't beat him the same way twice. Unfortunately, after a while of getting the crap kicked out of him by creative and new ways by superheroes, he decided, okay, I'm out, and essentially became an evil version of Oracle, giving bad guys information for a price. One of the most dangerous adapters that I remember from comics is Doomsday. Now, they changed things around a little bit in his modern origins, but the first thing he was seen as was a Kryptonian experiment. They were on a harsh planet, and they just kept on taking a humanoid child, dumping it into this harsh thing. He would die, but then they'd take the DNA, they'd clone it, and every time they do, the DNA would actually evolve a little bit, becoming stronger and tougher and able to survive. Eventually, after 20 years, the thing evolved. It would take only millions of years. And the creature became super powerful, tough, and wanting to kill anything and everything around it. The other bad side is, yes, you are capable of defeating or possibly killing Doomsday. But here's the problem. He adapts and he remembers. Even if you stop his heart, even if he is technically and clinically dead, he will arise again. And when he does, you cannot kill him the same way twice. See, I'm thinking right now that the best thing that Saitama might be is a cross kind of between Nemesis Kid from DC and the Answer from Marvel. Think about it. He's capable of pushing himself, and whatever his opponent is, he's capable of taking them out with one shot. I'm thinking that what happened is his bioelectric field, his magnetic field, or his senses, is actually so strong that it's capable of sensing its environment as well as opponents that are against him. See, this isn't all that far off. You know, when we touch a solid object, technically we're not touching the object, but each object actually produces an electromagnetic field that's keeping its atoms together. What we're feeling is that field. That's true. So what happens if that field is actually scanning stuff and he's adjusting to it? That weird blank look he gets when he's checking out an opponent? What if he's not just scanning? What if he's actually scouring and breaking down what these guys can do? Yes, he is strong and tough to a point, but the longer he fights somebody, the more he adapts to them and eventually comes up with the ultimate strength he needs to take out the fight in the most efficient way. Not prolonged, but just one shot. Another possible power that could tie into this is the ability to find weaknesses. See, in DC and Marvel, they actually have two different powered martial artists. In Marvel, we've got Karnak of the Inhumans, and in DC Comics, believe it or not, we have Karate Kid. Yes, this actually existed before the Karate Kid movies. Every time, if you scroll down at the end credits of every Karate Kid movie, it has a little thing that's saying that Karate Kid is trademarked from DC Comics. So they had to pay DC Comics to get it. But both these characters had the ability to essentially find the weak spot in whatever they're facing, as far as an opponent or an artificial object, and once they focus enough, they can actually shatter through it. Pretty good power. Also, in DC, there's a character known as the Midnighter, kind of a super soldier kind of guy, enhanced to be strong, tough, fast, that kind of thing, good healer. But his biggest thing is his mental adaptations. He can essentially run a fight simulator in his mind, checking out the odds of all of his opponents in a fraction of a second. His big speech is, I fought this fight 100 times in my head. He already knows how these guys are going to move. He knows how they're going to fight. He knows where to strike, what weaknesses and strengths they have, and how to best play off of it. It's actually pretty interesting. So I'm thinking that Saitama's bioelectric field may actually be tied in here. And yes, he is strong, but it's all about adaptation. I think he reads whatever his opponent or obstacle is, either animate or inanimate, figures out what it takes to beat it, and he can usually power through it, but I'm thinking possibly a companion power he might have is the ability to find the weakness in these items. So he adapts not only to the strength and durability of it, but he can also find the weak spot and strike it to shatter it. Maybe he actually resonates it at a certain frequency, so when he's hitting it, maybe he's actually vibrating at just the right frequency to shatter it from internally. Interesting way of going. Now, the biofield thing is something I bring up because there's another power that people kind of dismiss as just a comedy thing. But in one episode of One Punch Man, he was having a dream where he got woken up violently by an invasion of these subterranean beings who wanted to take over the surface world. And they were powerful, but he saw them as these significantly large, vicious, powerful creatures, and he started actually wailing into them. He was fighting them, hit after hit, one at a time, but he was bouncing from one after another, and he was actually getting a rush again. And they were getting larger and larger, and he was actually getting excited about this. Then he woke up, and he fought them, but they were significantly smaller. This goes with my adaptation theory, because what if he actually was asleep, so he sensed that there was danger coming, and his mind kind of projected that onto it as a warning of what was going on. But because he was more vulnerable, they appeared to be more of a threat in his mind. Now, unlike the Answer from Marvel, he doesn't just adapt to physical and mental stresses. This is something that it seems to only be in raw physical power. That's why he may not be the smartest guy, but he doesn't have to be. You put a test in front of him and has to do math or whatever. He's not going to do the greatest. He's worried about the simplest little things, but you do a physical challenge, whatever it is, he can take things out. So, I think what happens is he's adapting. But because he has, in my opinion, adaptive powers for sensing his opponents and finding their weak spot, and then summoning up the power to overcome it, there is a weak spot that I've noticed. One, the episode where the mosquito queen came forth. Saitama was trying to stop a mosquito, and normally he should be fast enough to dodge bullets or things like that, but he couldn't stop a mosquito. He was hitting it hard, but he couldn't quite get it. He was rough. I'm thinking that although he did have a good baseline of power, the mosquito was so small it didn't trigger his biofield's warning sense. It was an annoyance, not a threat. See, this will also make sense because if he's putting on an electrical field to sense things, did you know that the electric eel's ability to generate electrical shock isn't just for a defensive thing, but also it actually generates an electrical sensor array net around them, basically, that if anything crosses the field, they can detect it, kind of like an early warning sense. This would explain part why he may be bald, because this field became so strong, it acted like electrolysis and eliminating his hair. But if he's strong enough to take on things like cold or extreme temperatures, he wouldn't need hair anymore. It would be an adaptation that is no longer required, so of course you're going to lose it to put in that. It makes some sense. So, I think anything small enough, or something that can hide its electromagnetic field from it, if he can't sense it to detect it or build up how to take it on, that could be a weakness of his. Literally, if you could trick his body into not thinking that something is a threat, you might actually be able to take him out. I mean, we've seen him actually lose at a contest of eating spicy ramen to Gyros, so he does have limitations, very human limitations, but that was because he wasn't actually trying to fight it. He was just trying to consume. With that also, any kind of position where if you can only cut off from his electromagnetic senses to be blind, essentially, if you can somehow be invisible, not just moving fast, but somehow you actually make yourself invisible, warping light or EM fields around you, you might have a shot. If you're small enough to not be seen, someone like the Atom or Ant-Man could actually get in the shot on him. So watch out for super small bad guys. Also, any position where he could be put in where his strength could be used against him. There's all kind of different things that, like there's a metal like vibranium that actually absorbs kinetic attacks. So the harder you hit it, the harder it's going to be able to reflect it. Things like these are possible. And One Punch Man can take stuff out. But remember, he's a satire, he's parody, and it is all in fun. But there's a lot of fans out there that are trying to figure out how this works. These are all my theories based on decades of other comic book characters, both heroes and villains, that have adaptive powers. To me, it makes perfect sense. He's powerful to a degree, but it's his ability to adapt to whatever his opponent or obstacle is That really makes it. He was told to jump high for his test for the superhero exam. Now, he jumped and he got stuck on the ceiling. That's because he was trying to just achieve to see how high he can go within the confines. He actually just barely went through it. If he set his mind to breaking through the roof into something on the other side, I have no doubt that he would have adapted to go all the way through it and wouldn't be stopped. I think coming up in one episode, there's supposed to be a thing where someone supposedly knocks him to the moon. He's not only surviving, but he jumps back to take out the bad guy. So, hope I wasn't spoiling anything there for you, but this is what I've heard online. So, I believe that, yes, he is superhumanly tough, durable, fast like that. But I believe his body all has the main power of adaptation, physical adaptation to confront whatever opponent, animate or inanimate, is in front of him, and to summon up the power to strike it. A secondary power that might be part of it is the ability to not only sense his target and adapt to it, but also to find the weak spot in that target, so when he does hit, he actually creates some kind of resonance and does the maximum amount of damage necessary, so he wastes the smallest amount of energy. Also, maybe the whole precognition thing, like I said, it could be just a joke, but if he's reading bioelectric fields, that could actually explain what he's doing. And it's a subconscious thing, because, let's face it, he's not that bright. He hasn't been shown to really predict the future. He's just doing this for kicks. So he's physically adaptive, but not necessarily mentally. Looks like I've got people chiming in already. So, anime fans, comic book fans, all my fans on my channel, what do you think? Do you think I got something about Saitama? Do you think I've actually cracked the code on him actually having some kind of adaptive powers? So he just, as I said, he becomes as strong as he needs to be when he needs to be it to deal with his foes. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, pass this bad boy around. Please feel free to pass it around to any kind of forums or anything like that. If you know anyone that would like to check this out, please, you have my permission, pass it along. Alright guys, until next time, Dave signing off. Peace. Yum yum.